9/11 was catastrophic to my case because the jury was no more looking at guilt or innocence. And the prosecutor was, with his over 18 years of experience, was able to manipulate the jury and take their eyes off his key witness, who was described, and if I may quote him from Judge Gregory in the appellate court, described him as Harab, and I quote, Harab was described throughout the trial as untrustworthy, manipulative, a liar, and exaggerator. So that's Harb, and the government acknowledged he was the sole witness against me on those in this count. Yet I was convicted. Why I was convicted? Because the jury were not looking at the evidence. They were scared. They were terrified. The prosecutor did a great job in making the jury basically fear me and think that if they let me out, I would do another 9/11.
Hello everyone, I'm Rania Khalek and this is Dispatches. Just after 9/11, at the start of the war on terror hysteria that would ensnare many innocent Arabs and Muslims in the US criminal justice system on questionable and flimsy charges, Mohamad Youssef Hammoud, a Lebanese-American, found himself at the center of it all as one of the first to be targeted. In 2003, Hammoud was sentenced to 155 years in prison on allegations of providing material support to the Lebanese resistance organization Hezbollah, with funds garnered through a cigarette smuggling operation. In fact, Hammoud was the first person in the US to be charged for material support to a designated terrorist organization. Hammoud was characterized by US officials and media as an enemy combatant and a dangerous terrorist financier. Both Hezbollah and Hammoud denied the charges against him, and Hammoud continues to maintain his innocence, though he isn't shy about expressing rhetorical support for Hezbollah. While Hezbollah has been designated a terrorist organization by the State Department for daring to fight back against Israeli aggression, for many Lebanese, including Hammoud, who grew up under Israeli occupation and even faced arrest and torture under their rule, Hezbollah is seen as a resistance group worthy of praise and support for liberating land from the Israelis and protecting Lebanon's territorial integrity from groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS. After 23 years behind bars due to what Hammoud describes as political persecution, he was released. Joining me to discuss the case against him and what he endured in prison and how it feels to be out and back in Lebanon is Mohamad Youssef Hammoud. But before we jump into it, this is just the first half of this episode. The second half is available for Breakthrough News members only. You can become a member at patreon.com/breakthroughnews. And as always, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell so you get a notification whenever we post new content. And if you appreciate this show, you can also donate below on YouTube. Mohamad, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's great to have you on. We're gonna, get into all of the specifics about your case and what you endured during your time in prison and I guess what it's like being out. But, first, you actually grew up in Lebanon before coming to the US. So before we get into all the details about what went on with your case, why don't you tell me a little bit about your life, your upbringing in Lebanon, your background, and what you saw growing up, because part of that was during the war.
Sure. So I was born in Berger Barajni during the Civil War. In fact, it started 2 years after my birth. So I went through the Israeli occupation and through the civil war between East Beirut and West Beirut, including the Palestinian camps and so many things. So basically, the first 18 years that I lived in Lebanon was full of turmoil and everything that you can describe. So my mom was beyond, she was basically pressuring me to leave Lebanon because she did not want me to join any militia or get killed or kill somebody. So basically in 1992, I decided to leave. After my mother pressured me so much, I left to United States, where my two brothers lived in Charlotte, North Carolina.
And of course, you're going to the US. I'm curious if you can think back, like, what were your thoughts about the US before you went? How did you view the country?
Although I was mindful of United States foreign policy that I perceived as unjust for its support to Israel, but I thought America was the greatest country on earth. I thought it's the best democracy, it's the best justice system, and I was hoping one day I will be American citizen and contribute to this society. So
So that's how you viewed the country. And then, of course, you're like, what are you doing when you're throughout the 90s? When you come, like, how do you end up establishing yourself? How did you end up in the like profession that you were in?
yeah,
And of course, I'm talking pre 2000. So,
yes. So first, I started studying English, and I went to college. I was trying to study computer science, but I went in and off, depend on my financial situation. First, I worked in Domino's Pizza as driver while I was going to college.
mhm.
I In 1996 to 1998, I came involved in something that I'm ashamed of, which is selling cigarettes without paying taxes, federal taxes. But I stopped this in 1998. November 1998, I stopped it completely. In 2000, I built and owned gas station with my ex-wife and a partner in Michigan. So that was my last business. During this time, from 1998 to 2000, I was 100% doing everything by the book. I was paying taxes. I was doing everything that I could do to be a good person in the United States and obeying all the laws.
Okay, and so then we get to the year 2000. And of course, this is when you're basically caught up in and accused by US authorities of well what you just mentioned, which was the cigarette importing, exporting and then not paying taxes on it. But moreover, you're accused at this time of using that money that you made to send financing to Hezbollah, which is, of course, classified by the US State Department as a terrorist organization, though Hezbollah, of course, has never done anything to attack the US. It's only ever had armed struggle against Israel, but that's enough, of course, for the US to classify it as a terrorist organization. Regardless, tell me what's going on. Like it's July 2000. What happens?
Yes, what's interesting about that is that we had, as a a few Shia Muslims in Charlotte, who most of them were students. We did not have a mosque, so they were meeting in the community houses. So just to every Thursday night to pray and get together. I did not establish that meeting. I came, it was established in the 80s, way before I came in. And part of the rules in the meeting that no one would label that meeting with any political because we were divided. Some of us liked Amal more than Hezbollah.
Mm.
So everybody has his own views on that, right? Definitely, as all Lebanese who's in different countries, we were following the politics in Lebanon and at the time the resistance. And all of us, regardless of our affiliation or what we like, whether Amal or Hezbollah, we agreed on one thing that we love our freedom to our country, Lebanon. So whenever something happened in Lebanon, all of us were proud of it and we talked about it. So somehow the government misconstrued this meeting and did not bother even to interview me and ask me about or ask anyone about this meeting. So they came, stormed my house, and arrested everybody. And from the first day, the prosecutor declared that he arrested a Hezbollah financial cell, and I was its leader. So 2 years later, the prosecutor could not prove one piece of evidence that I supported Hezbollah financially. All what he was able to find is that my likeness to Hezbollah, which I never denied. I mean, when I was a kid in Lebanon, they supported me to go to school. They paid me money to be able to survive since I lost my father when I was 13. So that's basically, and of course, I was proud of them, the way they were liberating Lebanon and trying to liberate my country. As I said, so when the prosecutor declared that he arrested a cell and I was its leader, later on the evidence did not prove that, but he did not want to back up. He wants to prove his theory. So later on, he got a person who has a lot of interest, Said Harb, who was facing a lot of time in prison for different crimes. And he knew that he was desperate to bring his family from Lebanon. So what he did then, he gave Said all what he wants and brought him to, then Said agreed to testify that I gave him $3,500 in 1999. But what's interesting about Saeed's testimony is that I just 2 months earlier, I received $70,000 from Lebanon from my brother to build a gas station. So logically, why would I ask my brother to send me money to America and then go violate American law and send them with Saeed instead of saying to my brother, hey, brother, please send me less than 70, take $3,500 or whatever the case and give it to Hezbollah and send me the rest. So basically, like I wanted to violate American law. So I bring the money so I can send them back. Also, what's interesting, the government could not find that check, which was supposedly in 1999. They found a check to Sayyid Fadlallah, which I paid and admitted before anything that I paid in 1994. They found that check from 1994, which I admit to, but they could not find the check from 1999. Why? Simply because it did not exist.
Right. And you also, this is all happening. I want to set up the political climate here because this is the year 2000. The following year, these cases take a while. Cases like this take quite some time to prosecute through the court system. So as this is making its way through the court system, there is, according to an article in Lorient, actually, there was something called Operation Smokescreen, which is like the law enforcement operation that was happening in the background to basically ensnare you and I guess the people that you were associated with in this idea of like this ring, this Hezbollah ring that exists in Charlotte, North Carolina, which just sounds so absurd. But beyond that, this case is taking place over the next 2 years. And in the process of that, we have 9/11, right? 9/11
Yes.
takes place. And then the political climate in America becomes very anti-Arab, anti-Muslim. It became very, very easy to basically ensnare any Arab or Muslim that had, political views that maybe were against U.S. foreign policy as being supporters of terrorism in this or that way. And your case is, I believe, the first one where there was a law, I think it was like a 1996 law, if I'm not mistaken, where you were basically charged with material support for a terrorist organization. It was the first case of its kind. And of course, this is like not having anything to do with Al-Qaeda, it's having to do with Hezbollah. But as far as the U.S. is concerned at this time, there's no difference between any group. They're all the same, right? So yeah. I'm curious, like, how did that 9/11 hysteria, that political climate, do you think how do you believe it impacted your case? Do you think it made it easier to prosecute you? Did you feel a difference in almost like the way that the justice system behaved throughout your case because of 9/11?
Yes, definitely. 9/11 was catastrophic to my case because the jury was no more looking at guilt or innocence. And the prosecutor was, with his over 18 years of experience, was able to manipulate the jury and take their eyes off his key witness, who was described, and if I may quote him from Judge Gregory in the appellate court, described him as Harb, and I quote, Harb was described throughout the trial as untrustworthy, manipulative, a liar, and exaggerator. So that's Harb, and the government acknowledged he was the sole witness against me on in this count. Yet I was convicted. Why I was convicted? Because the jury were not looking at the evidence. They were scared. They were terrified. The prosecutor did a great job in making the jury basically fear me and think that if they let me out, I would do another 9/11. He invoked their patriotism to the point where one of the jurors, despite the fact that there was a flag in the jury room, American flag in the jury room, and American flag in the court, she felt the need to express her patriotism and bring with her an American flag and put it on the jury table. That's according to the media. Of course, I was not able to see that, but I read about it. So that shows you how much he was successful on that. Of course, the world changed and everything started meaning differently before 9/11 and after 9/11. The prosecutor said it to the author of Lightning Out of Lebanon when she was asking him about the case. He said, I knew this case was a lifetime case, was a career maker, and that's
Mm.
why he picked it up because his seniority. So that prosecutor did not care about justice. He had one thing in his mind, how to enhance his career. Imagine I volunteered and asked him to interview me. And I said, I'll take polygraph test to prove for you that in 1999, I did not send penny to Hezbollah or even to my family in Lebanon because I just came from Lebanon. I went to
Mhm.
Lebanon in November 98 and came back in May 1999. So I was getting money from Lebanon. I was building my gas station. So I was in need to money. I was not in position at that moment to send money to Lebanon. So, of course, 9/11 played big role, and the prosecutor, who, as I said, he was selfish in his interest to himself. He manipulated the circumstances and achieved his goal by convicting me and making himself, the greatest protector of United American people.
Yeah, and I mean, just to give those who are watching and listening an idea of how serious this was, I mean, so you have this this is in June 2002. You have this 5 week trial that ends then, and you're found guilty after 5 weeks by like after this prosecutor like basically plays on quote unquote patriotism in this sort of post 9/11 atmosphere that's very horrible for you to have to deal with at the time. And then in 2003 you're actually sentenced to 155 years in prison. 155 years. And just to remind people, the accusation here, which you're obviously maintaining your innocence and saying never happened, but the accusation is that you gave a portion of these profits from this cigarette smuggling operation in the 90s, a portion of it to Hezbollah, which you're denying ever happened. But I mean, even if that had happened, like 155 years sounds
Yeah.
pretty insane. Of course, years later, that was reduced to 30 years, and you did end up serving 23, and we can talk more about that. But I wanted to ask you about your what happened with your brother because your brother was also caught up in this. Did he also face legal consequences?
Yes, actually, not only my brother, also my ex-wife and another brother and two cousins. My
Wow.
ex-wife, who was American and never heard of Hezbollah prior to my trial, she had to plead guilty as a member of Hezbollah. When she came to the court to testify, my lawyer asked her, Angie, do you know what Hezbollah is? She said, well, prior to my trial, I did not know. But now that I'm accused of being a member of Hezbollah, I searched on the internet and I learned about it. He told her you pled guilty. She did not know at first that she pled guilty to being a member of Hezbollah, but he told her yes, you did. So she was surprised to learn that actually she pled guilty. So again, that shows you the prosecutor mentality and how the judge. You know what's interesting to show you that about the money and this is quotation from the district judge who gave me 155 years. He's talking to the prosecutor, so he tell him there was no proof he raised funds for violent Hezbollah activity, and he's talking because it's in the indictment. So look what he say. I have a problem leaving that in when you did not have any proof on that. This is the same judge who gave me 155 years 2 months
Wow.
after this quotation. He acknowledged there was no evidence that I supported Hezbollah violent activity, yet he gave me time that usually preserved for those who intend to kill innocent people and others. You know.
And I really just I want to quickly ask you like about the whole cigarette smuggling thing because obviously they tried to play this up so much, but this wasn't exactly an unusual business for like new immigrants to the US to be involved in. I mean, you get to the US, you're looking for work and a way to like make a paycheck so you can like support yourself. And you had mentioned in a prior interview that like it was actually quite common during this period of time for Lebanese, Palestinians, Yemenis to start like importing exporting cigarettes without paying taxes. It wasn't like you were like the brainchild behind some major operation. I just
Yeah.
want to emphasize that, and I'm sure maybe people can relate. A lot of people move to the US. Like I know people who have, they work under the table to make money for a while and not pay taxes until they can work properly. Like there's things you do that you have to do to support yourself. I'm not
Yeah.
justifying anything. I'm just curious, like when you did come to the US, was like, I assume that's how you got wrapped into that. It's just a way to make money.
Yeah. Look, first 4 years in the United States, I did not jump to that cigarette business. In fact, after a while, as I said, I worked in Domino's Pizza. I was not making enough money, and I saw other people making money. And you know what's interesting is that not one single person who was caught by the authority did any time in prison. If I knew one person went to jail, I wouldn't have done it. So what made it and what enticed me or attracted me to that job? Since people, I said, oh, all what I'm risking is my money, and yes, I can live with it if they took my money. But if I knew that jail was part of the deal, I wouldn't have done it. Of course, they turned the case completely different. I wasn't the first one. People were dealing with cigarettes like it was legal. Just like you mentioned, Palestinians, Yemenis, Lebanese, many Lebanese, and the government knew about them because they went to their houses and they have record. It's not like a drug where you can hide the record. It's everything's open on. You have a legitimate business in North Carolina where you have tax ID number and all of this. So they knew every single person who worked in cigarettes. In fact, at the sentencing hearing, the government brought all those lists. But you know what's funny? In the end, they said all of those people were working with me without any evidence to support their allegations. Their key witness on cigarettes was Angie, my ex-wife, and she told them, look, those people did not work with us. In fact, those people were competitor to me. And yet the prosecution, just to give me life sentence, he added all those people to my account to bring the money up and say that I spent like about 6 million or something, which is really ridiculous.
So why do you think you were targeted? Like, why you and not somebody else? Like, do you have, I mean, you could probably mostly speculate here, but were you a politically vocal person? Like, were there certain people who came after you for reasons unrelated and this was just an easy way to go after you? Like, why do you think you specifically were the one that was like forced to go to prison
Great.
for this?
You know, it's interesting. I came to America and I was naive and I really believed. First class, I remember we took about American freedom, the First Amendment, and I really believed in it. My mom came from Lebanon to visit me. When she saw that religious meeting, she complained about it. I told her, Mom, this is the United States. We are not in Lebanon or Syria or Saudi Arabia or those countries. This is the United States. You can say whatever you want. You can do whatever you want, right? Well, now I wish I followed my mom's advice because I told this to the prosecutor. Had I known that I would be prosecuted for something like that, you bring something that you say it's legal, but yet you want to show the jury my intention, which was not part of the jury instructions. It was only to terrify them. I wouldn't have done that if I knew this is what United States. I would have. I mean, I'm used to third world. I wasn't born in United States, so I could act in a way where I did not express my feelings. So I spoke about Hezbollah openly. I never had my feeling about it. I never had my feeling about the resistance. So that's basically, they thought because I was vocal about it, like I'm really Hezbollah, you know. And remember, I lived in Burj Al Barajni. So who's my friends? All of them, most of them associated with Hezbollah. So they are not going to be anti-Hezbollah, you know.
Right.
So of course that's add to it.
You know, when you were first charged, it was just the tax thing, which you pleaded guilty to, right? And then this charge of the Hezbollah stuff gets added on. When was the Hezbollah charge thrown in there?
Yes, only when Saeed Harb testified, which was a few months before my trial, like 3 or 4 months. Because, as I said, they could not prove anything of money. You know what? They had recorded thousands of phone calls. My attorney asked the FBI agent, "Did you hear any time that Mohamad talking about sending money to Lebanon?" He said, "No." "Did you hear Mohamad saying like he condemned the United States or talking anything bad about the United States?" He said, "No." So it was absolutely nothing but Saeed Harb word that got me those charges, where he said I sent money, so they substitute me in his place.
And then he got a reduced sentence as a result of that.
Of course, yes.
It's very typical of American justice system.
Of course, yes. And they brought his family, which was very important to him. So 12 members of his family came on taxpayers' money and they gave them a green card. And of course, by now, probably most likely they are citizen, and they paid them on witness program and all of this stuff.
I just to give people an idea of like how, again, going back to the 9/11 hysteria, in 2011, you had appealed. You had like filed an appeal. And during that, in 2011, your appeal was denied. And I bring that up only to say, like, I found this statement from the first assistant U.S. attorney called David Brown at the time, who argued the case against your appeal and won. And he invoked 9/11. This is 2011. This is 10 years after 9/11, still invoking 9/11 to keep you behind bars. He said, and I quote, Mohamad Hammoud stands today as an enemy combatant who continues to be successfully removed from the front lines. Today's sentence is fair because Hammoud's proven acts call for this sentence. He earned this sentence. More importantly, it is fair because the American people deserve to be free of fear of any retaliatory efforts by Hammoud. The collective experiences of the American people since September 11th, 2001 stand as a constant reminder that leaders and groups such as Hammoud and his local terrorist cell still represent the greatest threat to American citizens. I mean, this language is so outlandish. And this is 10 years after 9/11 being used to keep you behind bars. It's, the fact that he calls you an enemy combatant is so crazy.
Yes, as if they arrested me from the battlefield or something, not from my bedroom,
Yeah. Oh my. So I want to talk a little bit about you spent 23 years behind bars. And I also want to talk about your release because that was quite unexpected for most people and interesting. But I want to talk about your time in prison. Tell me, walk me through these 23 years. I mean, of course, we don't have all day. So, briefly walk me through these 23 years. U.S. prisons aren't exactly known for being hospitable places. It's actually quite a traumatizing experience for most people who have to endure sitting in a prison cell. So tell me about that.
Yes. Just if you allow me, before I go there, just I want to say that if you read Judge Gregory in the Fourth Circuit dissent, you will see how much pressure 9/11 had on him. So he had to justify why he had to dissent and say my conviction should be vacated. So he began his introduction that we're living in this environment and I'm not giving free for terrorists to do this, but I have a constitutional responsibility to uphold this constitution. And then he goes on to speaks about why my case should be vacated. And part of it, he would explain that there was no evidence. He said there was no evidence whatsoever that Hammoud's money reached Harakeh or Hezbollah. In regard to the prison, of course, due to my 155 years and due to some officers, some people who really wants to punish me, because initially I was designated to medium security, which really fit my profile and background since I did not have any violence or accused of violence. But when I reached that prison, they put me in isolation and sent me to one of the worst prisons in the United States. At the time they called it Bloody Bowman. It's USP, high security, where people, it's like front lines. Before the doors open, people has to have their boots on all day long. People go to the shower with their boots, stabbing every few days, murdering. For somebody like me who never been in gang or drugs or this, it was like absolutely not my environment. So I had to be treated like one of those killers and murderers, and so just because of my case. After that, I moved to different prison, and then they opened a prison in 2006. It's called Communication Management Unit. NPR described that place as a Guantanamo in the United States due to the fact that the majority were Muslims in it. After several lawsuits, they start bringing non-Muslim to it, but the place is really shame on American justice because we have no rights over there. We don't have rec yards as other prisons have. We have some cages, they call them rec yard. We're supposed to have 2 phone calls a week, versus in the other prison we were able to get 300 and later on 510 minutes a month. In that place, we take 2 calls for any reason. If the prison lockdown, we lose our phone call to our family. The medical treatment is absolutely bad. No one would believe that in the United States somebody would suffer like me. I had skin, when I came to that prison, I started having a skin problem to the point where I would be crying on myself from pain all day long. I'm scratching my skin and complaining, and they taking their time. They are not worried. I'm not gonna die. As long as I'm not gonna die out of that problem. So that was. I describe it as torturing because I do believe it was torturing when you cannot sleep or you cannot stay uh, uh, 30 minutes without having this pain. I wonder if that not torture, what torture is, you know.
Yeah.
I complained so much about it, and I was never treated there. I mean, they tried only what they did to mark the box that we've been treating him in the prison. Every minute they give me something, and it was not working. Yeah, so unfortunately, all those what we hear, look, as I said before, America is great on books, whether when you come to the law, criminal law, or whether you come to human rights on prison. You read what my rights is and what they're supposed to give me, you say, wow, it's really great country. But in reality, for example, I don't eat meat due to my religion. I began with that in the prison, right? They're supposed to feed me what they feed other prisoners. It's exactly the same amount of protein, the same amount of calories and everything. But in the reality, because not many people complain about no meat, most of the time I was not able to eat from the kitchen food. I have to ask my family to send me money so I can buy from food from the store. So that, of course, a lot of people are not aware of because they read what they saw in the books or in their websites, and they think that's the reality in the United States.
Right. Of course, I think a lot of people who watch this program are probably somewhat familiar with the prison conditions in the US, and won't be surprised to hear what you're saying. It's something that we do cover a lot on Breakthrough News, but not obviously most American media does not. But another thing that I saw that you told to another outlet that was quite horrifying is that you were at one point, I don't, you can specify when this happened, but you were detained at some time during your imprisonment with men who were accused of belonging to Al Qaeda and to ISIS, which is, you know, for those who aren't familiar, I mean, you're a Shia Muslim, and Al Qaeda and ISIS are genocidal
Yeah,
towards Shias in particular. So, can you talk a little bit about that experience?
sure. In 2019, which is same CMU, I came and the majority were ISIS, and some of them were Al Qaeda. And what's interesting, just a few months prior to my arrival, one ISIS actually killed an older man and tried to cut his head.
If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear the rest, you can access it by becoming a Breakthrough News member at patreon.com/breakthrough news.